the NATO-Ukrainian war against Russia. Vital things to know. That's the topic of this talk or discussion. We need to know some vital things concerning this NATO-Ukrainian war against Russia. First of all, you need to know that it is not a war that involves Ukraine and Russia alone. It is not even what you could call a proxy war. That's where the Russians made mistake at the very beginning by not defining it by its proper name. This is a NATO-Ukrainian war against Russia. It's never a proxy war, because NATO is actively involved in Ukraine right from the beginning. They planned everything. They just initially started using the Ukrainians as a front, and they couldn't do it completely because they were still there at the beginning as advisors, as instructors. And if you use something, so if I were to take a gun now and shoot at somebody, they say, okay, no, I'm not the one that killed that person. It's the gun that killed that person. Am I not the one that fired the gun? That is the exact way. But let me just still give this example. It's like a man having a son, and they said, okay, the world boxing champion is involved in the fight against your son. And he says, no, he cannot be involved because if he's involved in a fight against my son, then it means that he's in fight against me. And they said, go and look. And he went. And as the opponent was punching the son, he was directing, no. That is an uppercut that you should give. If you give that uppercut, almost the whole head will come off. If it doesn't come off, it will just fall down, completely unconscious. And you witnessed it with your own eyes. And somebody says that, no, he's not involved. He was the one directing the opponent to strike the blows. I do not know whether you will take that to any law court in any part of the world, and they will say that it's guiltless, that is not involved. So you see, right from the beginning, it's not a proxy war. It's a misnomer to call it a proxy war. It's a NATO-Ukrainian war against Russia. And like I said before, there are so many vital things that we need to know about this war, because we are all affected. You may say that, oh, it's just between NATO and Ukrainians combining together against, it's just NATO and Ukraine, Ukraine together combining against Russia. It doesn't concern me. I am in another country. That's a big mistake, because this war is a global war. It is the Third World War. It concerns every nation. And if it concerns every nation, it means it concerns all individuals in the nation, in the nations. Later on, when we discuss in the later part of the talk, you will see how it concerns each individual. And as a result, so many individuals are involved and they are not aware. And they are involved in this thing that not only destroys the body, but destroys the soul. In complete horrible destruction. First of all, many will be involved in agonizing destruction here on earth. After the horror of the explosions, there will be radiation, cancer, everything for generations. And after that, for those that die immediately and those that die later, they just discover that they have been condemned to eternal hell, eternal torture, eternal agony in hell. That's why I say that there are very vital things to know about this war. Let me just give you an example. Now, in those nations that we will discover in the study to be satanic nations, evil nations, because they operate the agenda of Satan clearly, that is anti-God, against God's commandment. Now, they have a gender rearrangement program, and they will come and seize a child and say that this child is not a male or this child is not a female, and they will forcefully take that child. And try to convert the child to another gender. Now, you who is the parent, what have you done to stop such a thing? Your offspring being destroyed like that. Are you not aware of mothers fighting lions to protect their children? I mean, is that not madness? But check Google and make research. You discover that is a truth. Fighting wild animals, even dogs, fighting snakes to protect the baby. Not the baby of the dog, the baby of the house. The little child in the house. Fighting bears when they approach the house. And you, a human being, the child that so many people are praying for and are not able to have. And it's not as the book condemnation that we may say that, okay, it's because of this sin that this person has done. It may just be a natural delay. Now, you have that precious child, and you allow that precious child to be taken from you, to be deformed completely in life. And you say that you are not responsible. And you, who is the pastor of the congregation that has happened, And even if it has not yet happened in your congregation, the fact that it is a practice that is being executed, it involves you. Because that is the work of the pastor. And if you that dare to call yourself a bishop or archbishop or whatever hierarchy in the church you claim is happening to your flock, the church that God has made you a bishop over or archbishop over, and you say that it doesn't concern you, that's self-deceit. Because you will be judged. You see, so there are so many vital things to know. And that's what this discussion is all about. You need to know them to preserve your life here on earth. I remember a picture where they were forcing a Ukrainian man to go, to be registered for the war. He was resisting them violently, but it was all in vain. The fighting and the resisting should have been done at the very beginning. And that goes for all nations that have evil leaders. Or if I want to be soft, bad leaders. You have to rise up and protest, or else you'll be involved. And be subject to blame concerning the consequences. Because it's very important that you have this knowledge. It's important for your salvation here on earth and for your salvation in eternity. You see, a lot of people are going to go into hell, not because of what they have done, but because of what they have failed to do, their inaction. You can check that in Matthew 25, where Jesus Christ himself was the one that was condemning them. I was hungry, you did not feed me. I was naked, you did not clothe me. I was in prison, you did not visit me. Inaction. Not that they committed adultery or fornication or murder or deceit or anything, but for inaction. And a lot of people are going to perish now and later on in eternity because of their inaction on this NATO-Ukrainian war against Russia. Well, one more thing is that I request your prayers. It's a very heavy work. As we go through, if you have gone through my earlier works, you discover that they contain information that have not been given before, that are completely new to this heart, to the fields of study. Because when you sit at the feet of God, the knowledge is pumped and it's every work. I even had to be rushed to the hospital because I started feeling very dizzy. The doctor called it a suspected attack of vertigo, so that you could know the extent of the study and the worrying about making everything right and precise. It's the work of scholarship. And as we go through the discussion, you see the result of scholarship. Things before that nobody on earth has ever spoken about or spoken of. New revelation, complete. Biblically, scientifically, in all ways. I mean, you are sitting at the seat of God. You know, you can't help being pumped in with the knowledge of God. Also, the work has been tedious because I have been operating with very few necessities. It's like being the general of the army, and when the opposing air force is coming, you enter a plane and go and fight them. When that is over, you see the tanks coming, you enter another tank and you start fighting all the tanks. The work is just too tedious. There is need for assistance, and to get assistance, there is need for financial input. I have listed my various accounts depending on your location. I can only receive 3 currencies: dollars, euros, pounds. So wherever you are, you just have to struggle to convert your currency to these things and send it to those accounts. The numbers are there on the screen. I hope people strain themselves even because the needs are much, and the time is extremely short. We are at the door already, and people need to know much, or else they will perish agonizingly on this earth and in hell after their death. And as from the short discussion that we've had, you've seen that it entails so many people that think that they are not affected. As we go through this study, you see how many people are affected. It's virtually almost everybody. Finally, for the videos that I've done before, if you made comments on Rumble or Odyssey, that of the comment of YouTube, is instantaneous. You are fine with it. Well, that of Rumble and Odyssey may be, but I've not been able to check them. So apologies for that. But when I have the financial assistance needed now, I'll be able to get proper team. Because these discussions are very heavy discussions. People may have questions. I will need to answer, because these are new concepts that you are going to be presented with. Never hide anywhere on earth. As I've told you before in my first YouTube video, that I'm a theological scientist that lands at the feet of God Himself. The work is like a continuation of the work of the apostles. Even one may even say the finalizing of the work of the Lord Jesus Christ. Well, I don't believe in talking out like that. Judge by what you see. Don't forget to study the notes properly. Read every word in the note to get a full understanding. God bless you as we proceed. Now, the first thing that I want you to know is that this is a war that is conducted in thick darkness. this NATO-Ukrainian war against Russia. It's not Russia against them. They are the ones that are against Russia. That's the first point of correction. It's a war that is conducted in thick darkness. You see, this one knowledge is very important because there is a mission station. Maybe just at that time it was just newly formed. What was saying, Russia's war of aggression, Russia's war, and that thing was provoking me fiercely to the extent that my spirit started moving against that country. And as we learn later on, there are so many weapons of war. When my spirit moved against that country, all the force, the real force of the country started emerging and started being recorded against that country. But fortunately, two networks came up from that country and they were fully pro-Russian, and that sort of calmed down my anger. Otherwise, the sin of that country, its past sins and present sin, will have risen up and consumed them. Well, you will learn about the power of righteousness later on. So it is a war conducted in thick darkness. Why? Because it is a demonic war. It is a demonic war with the forces of God being arraigned against the forces of the devil. Russia and the United States are the leaders of the coalition forces of God and the devil. Now, I'm not going to say outright like that this is the country that belongs to God. This is the country that belongs to the devil. I will just give you some manifestations of their actions, and you will know, you will judge by yourself objectively. Not that anybody will force the judgment on you. Now, one thing is that you can know the various nations where they belong because they manifest the character of their father. As I said before, it's a demonic war that involves God and Satan, and the forces of God and the forces of Satan. Now, the first criteria we are going to consider is lies and deceit. The war is called Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. This is a complete lie, because it is Ukraine that had been aggressive against the Russian-speaking people of Donbass, thus forcing the hand of Russia. So it is Russia's war of defense of the horribly attacked people of Donbass. And from this moment, I pity anybody that calls it Russia's war of aggression, because it's clearly shown you now. Second, it was the US that organized the coup against the legitimate government of Ukraine in 2014 due to NATO's aggressive advancement intention towards Russia's borders. So, the war is Russia's war of defense against NATO's aggressive expansionism towards Russia's borders. Third, you have heard the argument of Ukraine being a sovereign nation that should be allowed to make its choice. If that is the case, why did the US threaten nuclear war in 1962 when Cuba hosted the Soviet nuclear missiles? Furthermore, why did the US threaten war on Venezuela if it went ahead and sell its island of Blanquilla to China as a result of debt repayment.
The first picture shows the website that gave the account, while the second one, while discounting the account, shows the veracity of the assertion.
Finally, we all saw how the former German Chancellor exalted, that is EXU, exalted, about lying to President Putin on the Minsk agreement. Indeed, despite its very early censorship, many platforms still exist today on YouTube and the internet generally, immensely exposing the various numerous lies on a daily basis. In my earlier presentation, my first presentation, I already mentioned some of them, or at least I remember one of them that I mentioned. You need to study all my videos, every single one. Now, the second characteristic, oppression. The devil is the oppressor of the earth. One could expect his children to walk in his footsteps by oppressing the other human nations of the earth. That is why they break out of universally agreed rules of the United Nations and wage wars of aggression on the various nations and peoples, Yugoslavia, Libya, Iraq, Syria, etc. That is why they have military bases all over the world, so that they can impose their will on others. Oppression. C. Thievery. Everybody knows what happened in Iraq. The Christian, so-called Christian, nations gathered together against Iraq and lied against it that it had weapons of mass destruction, so that they could have a pretext for invading it in order to steal its oil. The same thing is happening in Syria. Coming in uninvited and by force of power to load away tankers of oil, leaving the citizens poor, impoverished, and starving. Next, anti-God abominations. These evil nations claim to be Christian nations, yet they not openly do what their God has warned them against, even openly promoting and forcing such acts and practices on other nations. Their past leaders came to Africa and said that if you do not support homosexuality, we will cut off AIDS from you. They said, okay, you can go ahead. Because it's something that is repulsive to God and repulsive to a normal human being. Of course, they may give you false scientific data, false, because they are liars, to prove homosexuality. I even read one essay that talked about Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed not for homosexuality and sexual sins, but for something else, maybe corruption that is not sexual corruption, Of course, I don't need to be specific. There are so many articles like that. But if you Google, I'm sure that anything I say, you should be able to find it on Google. By promoting such things, they openly declared that their God was very ignorant when he was declaring as abominably sinful homosexuality. This God that was doing it was extremely ignorant. And the verdict the judgment that he gave that should be executed on the homosexuals. Now, at this point, I may just put in slavery. That slavery was in the Bible. You know, the revelation of God is progressive. God had always wanted everybody to dwell in full freedom. So some things God allowed, and it's there in the Bible. So that when the progressive revelation now came, the people were able to adjust easily and readily. That of homosexuality is not a progressive revelation. It was clearly stated right there at the beginning. And for you to know that slavery was a progressive thing that God endured and allowed, He made provisions for slaves. That if you do this to your female slave, you set her free. If you injure the eye of your slave, these are the penalties. So God treated the slave as a full human being, just enduring and tolerating the darkness of that time. Now, another point I want to emphasize is that your alignment in this war determines the end state of your soul. Yes, your alignment in this war determines the end state of your soul. And as I've told you before, it's not only the end state of your soul, but even present situation of your physical body and your well-being. I've already mentioned the first point here about pastors, bishops, and archbishops and parents being condemned for all these things that are executed on their words. And by the way, the condemnation of the pastors, the bishops, and the archbishops, they are much higher, because they are the main fighting force. They are the generals of God. They are the ones expected to lead in the resistance. They are to organize enlightenment seminars and discussions and talks. And in their sermons, they are expected to bring out the biblical passages enumerating all these truths. Now, let me mention something. Did Martin Luther sit down and said that what the church had done doesn't affect him because he doesn't believe them? No. He rose up to protest that the church doesn't have the right to expect and demand such beliefs and acts from the church members. That was the selling of indulgences. You know church history. Martin Luther didn't just sit down. He took action. And if you check my history, I've been a one-man army. And I have changed so many high institutions. Because I will stand up and protest. And not just protest like that, the protests have been successful. High protests in so many high places. I didn't look at it that, I'm just a young man, not with little wealth and whatever. No. And you see, once I stood up, God stood up with me. He raised up so many people So many hired people to support me. When history is written later on and all those things are mentioned, they may seem like fantasy tales, but that's what has happened. Well, incidentally, in my first video, I mentioned, in my second video, I mentioned some of those things. There are so many, far much more. I didn't mention my war with a particular denomination. That's why being the best student, having the highest first class, they wage a heavy war against a work that I proved as a scholar because it's against their denominational beliefs. And they fought a cruel, evil war against me. Of course, I triumphed because you cannot be on God's side and lose like that with that need. For the loss. The need will be a higher need. Like the martyrs, suffering condemnation. They suffered because there was a higher need for their death. I've written so many other things in the notes. The censorship on the social media. Before that, I mentioned Christians calling themselves out of a national organization. I'm not saying that they should cut off themselves. I said call, In other words, you belong to the Lawyers Association, then gather yourselves, Christian lawyers, be meeting, be fellowshipping, so that when evil laws get promulgated, you are able to stand up as a body and rise up and raise up the consciousness of the people concerning it. And when the consciousness of the people is raised, action then will smoothly follow. Well, all the other things are in the notes. Now, I said it affects you as an individual and it affects you as a member of a nation. Now, I'm not going to mention that of other nations now. That one will come later on under messages to the nations. But I will mention just one particular nation which is causing heartbreak to God. And that nation is Israel. Israel is in mortal danger now. Why? First of all, the Jews are just masquerading Khazars, as proven by the legendary scholar Walter Bay in Simon's room. In Simon's room YouTube presentation, it's a lie. They are not Jews. This is on YouTube. Simon Rooms.
Apart from the U version Bible translation of Life.Church, the other major works used in this section are the 3 YouTube videos by Nature Discoveries, Terry Buckingham, and Walter Veit of Simon's Room.
You can find it yourself and hear that discussion. The present Jews in Israel are not real Jews. They are Khazars.
Fascinating book, and the web pages are there, you can check it out. Facts are facts. This is a book that was written by a Jewish man, and he confronted the thinking of many of the high-placed individuals of the world. This is interesting stuff. In this book, Benjamin H. Friedman, a Jewish man, writes about the Jews and reveals an interesting history. He states that the present Jews in Palestine are not the true descendants of the Judeans, but rather descendants of the Khazars.
Question. The present Jews in Israel are not real Jews. They are Khazars. And of course, it shouldn't surprise you, because of the nations that planted them there are liars. So it shouldn't surprise if they come up with lies. Now, what I'm saying is that for Israel to be saved, because Israel is in the opposing camp warring against Russia, they must immediately align fully with Russia and be in complete opposition to America and NATO immediately. Now, of course, the scriptures have said that out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, 18 is established. So, even though the presentation of whatever is a legendary scholarship presentation, whatever the legendary scholar, I'm not just going to take his presentation as final, because what we are discussing is very, very important. The second thing I want you to observe is that the present Israelites are an abomination to God, because the homosexuality and gender abominations that the Africans, Chinese, and even the Arabs completely reject is accepted by the Israeli government. Such a union performed outside Israel is recognized by Israel. And such couples, in quote, are welcome to settle and live peacefully in Israel. Can you imagine that? The nation that is supposed to be the model holy nation of the world, maybe even of the universe. Can you imagine that? Furthermore, the present Israeli composition cannot be allowed to govern the state of Israel, or rather New Israel. This is because of the attempt to build the third temple, which is a complete abomination. You know, they are trying to build the third temple now. That thing is a complete abomination. The old Israel has ended with the death of Jesus, because with it, the veil of the temple separating the Jews and the Gentiles was physically torn apart. So you are going to build another temple now with that veil. Do you know what that means? It means that you want God to commit sin. Check that in Galatians 2:18. I mean, when you start building again what you have torn apart, it is sin. That's why they cannot be allowed to govern Israel. Like I said before, that Israel is supposed to be New Israel. And you will know the members of New Israel if you check the notes. They are the original Jews, the real Jews, and the Christians, the new Jews. Christians are the new Jews.
Furthermore, concerning whether there is a need to build a third temple in order to fulfill prophecy, 2 points were raised that stood out among others in the discussion by Nature Discoveries. Is the third temple a literal event, or does it hold spiritual interpretation? The 2 points were raised suggesting that the third temple is needed to be built to complete prophecy. The first point, the execution of abomination of desolation, and the second point, the building of the temple edifice that has a running water through it. In it, it is claimed that the architecture of the third temple, cited from Ezekiel's description, is different because it has river flowing through the temple.
Although this prophecy can be fulfilled when Epiphanius forbade sacrifice and defilement of the temple site, Jesus' comments come after Epiphanius made the law against it. Other features indicated in Ezekiel, such as a river flowing from the temple, are noticeably absent in these past temple designs. Clearly, Ezekiel's vision, with such exquisite detail, demonstrates that the temple he described has yet to be built.
The answer may be that since Antiochus Epiphanes has already fulfilled the abomination of desolation prophecy, the term may be a typology. On the issue of the river flowing through, studies have shown that both first and second temples have a river in them. It just means that in the second temple, its design was more prominent. In the worst case scenario, it means the issue of the river is also typological. John 7:38-39 says, "He that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. But this spake he of the Spirit, which they that believe on him should receive. For the Holy Ghost was not yet given, because that Jesus was not yet glorified." Terry Buckingham, in his YouTube presentation, "The Third Temple will be built soon, but not where you think," mentions the Gihon Springs as a clue to the location of the temple. This proves that the first and second temples have a river flowing through them.
Another clue to the location of the temple is the Gihon Springs. The freshwater source is mentioned in the Bible in 1 Kings 1:38, where Solomon was brought to the Gihon to anoint him as king. Fresh running water is also necessary for worship and to perform animal sacrifices which took place in the temple. 1 Kings 8:62 tells us, "On the day of the temple dedication,
Solomon offered a sacrifice of fellowship offerings to the Lord, 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep and goats."
Cleaning up after the sacrifice of that many animals would require a huge amount of running water. Roman historian Tacitus tells us the temple
Contained an inexhaustible spring.
You have to have running water from a spring to wash and purify the priests before they go into the temple to worship. Here we have clear, clean, running water coming from the Gihon Springs, which travels through Hezekiah's tunnel and comes here to this pool of water. Before the priests would go into the temple, whether it be Solomon's temple or Herod's temple, they needed to be bathed in spring water. The only spring water in all Jerusalem is right here in the Gihon Springs. There's absolutely no spring water on the Temple Mount. There's no way that they would have washed themselves in the Gihon Springs and then walked a quarter of a mile to a half a mile up to the Temple Mount before they were allowed to go into the temple precinct, considered to be purified.
Note also that the temple of Zerubbabel, that's Eros temple, is the same as Ezekiel's so-called third temple. People are expecting a third temple with a river, saying that well, as if there is no river in that second temple. There was river in the first temple, for priest washing, as well as the cleaning of all the numerous daily rituals. Furthermore, concerning the temple, remember this fulfillment of the prophecy by Jesus. This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Matthew 21, 4-5. The general expectation was for the Messiah to come riding on a horse as a great conqueror king. But the Bible showed the fulfillment of the passage in Jesus' riding to Jerusalem as a gentle and humble prophet. This serves to illustrate that sometimes when the Bible talks physically about things in the Old Testament, their manifestations may be in the spiritual in the New Testament. Furthermore, Jesus showed his body is the new temple. John 2, 19-22. And the believers are the temples of God in which God now dwells. 1 Corinthians 3, 16-17. So the old physical temple has now been done away with. With this at the back of the mind, one could understand why there are what appears as supernatural events and happenings, earthquakes and fires, as well as emergence of Jews hating opposing governments to oppose and destroy the temple anytime attempts are made to rebuild it the third time.
Failed attempt to rebuild the temple. Several significant attempts to construct the third temple have utterly failed. Emperor Julian of Rome gave the Jews permission to reassemble the third temple in 361 AD. Multiple historical accounts claim the project was abandoned because of frequent fires and earthquakes, including the Galilee earthquake of 363 AD. Also, the Byzantine Empire was expelled from the Middle East in 601 AD, and Jews once more took possession of Jerusalem. When the Persians captured the region and gave it to the Christians, they swiftly destroyed the almost completed building, left the site in ruins, and later proceeded to dump their trash there. The temple project had only begun when the Persians took the area.
And you know the recent earthquake in Turkey and Syria is just next door to Israel. If you say, well, maybe that earthquake was man-made, as some theorists have suggested, that Americans using the HARP weapon. I just want you to know something. God has done things through other means before. So you shouldn't be surprised. The earth has been destabilized by that earthquake. So if the Americans use the HARP weapon, it doesn't mean that much because the area has been destabilized. So, and in such a major earthquake, you can expect it to destabilize further areas. I mean, it's a normal physical principle. I don't need to sweat to explain that. So, what's the conclusion of this segment? Therefore, Israel cannot exist in the state that it is in today. It starts to exist as New Israel, consisting of the old Jews, whose religious books are the Torah and the rest of the Old Testament, minus the tumult and the construction of the temple, as well as the new Jews who are Jews through Jesus Christ, Christians. So the real composition of Israel, which is supposed to be named New Israel, It's new Israel. You are claiming the Bible to give Israel to the Khazars, masquerading as Jews. If you are going to use the Bible to give it to them, then you must follow the teachings of the Bible that says that Christians are new Israel. So you can't govern it, and place it under the Jews. But I am not saying that the present Jews occupying it, masquerading Jews, should be evicted. No. They can still stay there. But they will have to give up the Talmud and the temple, as I've said earlier. Because I want you to know that those that have proven to be enemies of God are the people that commit sins against God, those Jews. And what did God do? He ejected them out. So they will be ejected out if they do not modify. And let me tell you, during the time of Jesus Christ, there were heretical sects.
The Sadducees refused to go beyond the written Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and thus, unlike the Pharisees, denied the immortality of the soul, bodily resurrection after death, and according to the Acts of the Apostles, that's 23:8, the 5th book of the New Testament, the existence of angelic spirits. The Mishnah was supremely important because it compiled the oral interpretations and traditions of the Pharisees and later on the rabbis into a single authoritative text, thus allowing oral tradition within Judaism to survive the destruction of the Second Temple. The Pharisees' heresies involved the Mishnah equating the oral tradition with the written word of God. It is comparable to equating the sayings of the church fathers like Clement of Alexandria, Augustine, Irenaeus, etc., with the Gospels or the Epistles.
These present masquerading Jews belong to one of the heretical sects, the Pharisees. They are the ones that have the Talmud with the Mishnah. You know what the Mishnah is? The Mishnah is, contains the commentaries on the Bible, and they have given it equal status as the Bible. It's like giving the words of Aquinas, Irenaeus, the church fathers, equal status as the words of the Bible. They are just guys, they do not have the same authority. And Jesus Christ had problems with them time and time again in the Bible, condemning their laws, their rules, everything. So they are enemies of God.
The religion of the modern state of Israel is based on Kabbalistic and Talmudic traditions and is far removed from the biblical worship of Yahweh. And if it is based on the Talmud, it is so anti-Jesus Christ that it...
And you are daring to make enemies of God to take his possession, his inheritance? I pity the nations that have allowed them in, because those nations have declared war on God. Remember, I'm not saying they should be ejected. As long as they reject the Talmud and the rebuilding of the temple, the third temple, is compulsory. I've proven it to you clearly by Bible passages and also by supernatural happenings, every time God will make an earthquake to destroy the temple that they were trying to rebuild, or make an opposing government to be in power that will war against the Jews and dispel them away and incapacitate them to build that temple. I'm happy it's clear to everybody now. So what anybody likes, I've given screenshots of the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and you can see from the screenshots, their heresies. These are anti-God heresies. So you cannot allow the enemies of God to possess his inheritance. He has always driven them out. That's what this story of the captivities is all about. You stay in my land and you are working against me, against my laws, then I will have to reject you out. And now, some nations the Anglo-Saxon nations were the spearhead of that effort. That's an open declaration of war against God. So the screenshots are there for you to read. It's what I've said, I've spoken. Now, another thing I want for you to note, and this is very important, in fact, is the chief cause of the NATO and American insistence on war against Russia. And that is because of stolen demonic technology. Acquired demonic, that is alien technology. You see, just check Google very well. You will see that America has made a pact with the aliens. That's why right from the beginning, when you mention flying saucer aliens and that you have seen them, they will take the person and hush him up. If the person does not agree with them to say that he has not seen what he has seen, they will put the person in mental institution. Our time is short, but they have been denying alien technology, the presence of aliens for a long time. And yet, when the discussion gets hot, then they are forced to confess. There was one video on the internet where a top American official, since I'm not sure again of his name, was saying, yes, there are aliens, and we have their technology. I think he said we have their technology. Yes. And I thought that everybody was aware of this. That they are just acquiring their technology. You see, so many, and that's why I pity some people that still deny the presence of aliens. I mean, look at it. Well, I wouldn't want to mention. I don't want to mention anybody's name. But just check, all the people that that have been denying the existence of aliens. And now, you, of course, see them admitting the existence of aliens. It's normal common sense that aliens exist. Normal common sense. So, and you can see it in the final revelation of America's TR3B Black Manta. Check it, Google it. TR3B Black Manta. It's in the notes that will be displayed on the screen. Google it. It's supposed to be an anti-gravity craft that the Americans now have developed. And all those things are what's pushing them. Yes, we have alien technology. You know, many people have observed that craft, you know, and call it a UFO because of its speed. And that's what the Americans think that they have, and NATO also believe in, that the Americans can easily defeat Russia. I will just tell you, even without mentioning God first, that Russia is not that far behind. Russia also has new weapons. You have seen President Putin talking about weapons based on new physical principles. Anybody that has understanding should be able to reflect new physical principles, not the old physical principles. New. Those are new weapons. And at the end of the day, you might just be surprised that Russia has far much more highly superior weapons than America. America has boasted of what it has, but Russia has kept quiet. Even, and if those Poseidon drones actually exist, you can just pity all those people that put their trust in bunkers. They just discovered that the water has covered them. Their bunker will be in the depth of the ocean. That's something that some of them have not calculated. And the nuclear weapons also fired could even cause a split on the earth. And even the high grounds will become valleys. We split at least. And you know the way God does, He will organize it so that the water will flow in and cover those bunkers. Well, there's also the overarching factor of the power of righteousness. We probably discuss this at another time because it's a very important power. And does it not amaze you that before you declare a war, you try to establish righteousness? It's because this person did this, that nation did that. And the war in the Bible is the just war. You cannot just declare war, without it being a just war. Check the whole of the Bible. Now, finally, I want you to know that this is a war with a preset winner and a preset loser. Do not be deceived by sight, as I've shown to you. Even in the worst case scenario, remember Deborah and Barak? In their war against Sisera and the chariots of iron. Those were the world powers of those days. And when the message came to Barak, go and fight, he said, look, unless you go with me, he would have thought that, okay, if I'm going to die, you will die too. For me to go and fight the world power with 900 chariots of iron, I know. I am not going to refuse God, though, but you have to go. And then Deborah said, look, no problem, but know that the glory will not be yours. It will belong to a woman. And that was what happened. And what did God use to fight those almighty chariots of iron? Ordinary rain. Ordinary rain. It rained, and the river Kishon swelled up. I know when water gets to mud, it makes everything sticky, So the chariot wheels got stuck in the mud. So their greatest power became their greatest weakness. So all the Israelites was just strolling down and executing them in their chariots. The power that they thought was almighty power. And you have seen what is happening with the Russians now, with the electromagnetic weapons. You have seen it with David and Goliath too. David did not fight with the normal weapons of war. He chose rather a sling, something that somebody may consider to be madness. A sling. And did it do the job or not? He did it fully well. You have seen how the electromagnetic weapons have been incapacitating everything. And let me just tell you this. The Russians have not yet discovered anything yet. Because this war is an existential war against God. Just as they are threatening Russia's existence, they are equally threatening God's existence. I've already taken too much time. But there are already so many accusations against God. I read whatdoesitmean.com the 13th of February 2023. And towards the closing end of the article, it says that if God doesn't destroy America, he must apologize to the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is the truth. And when I saw it, I told God, I said, look, this is what I had been telling you. I'm glad that somebody mentioned it. I said, this is one of the happiest days of my life. Because I thought to God, I make him to see all the pitfalls. He needs knowledge. God needs knowledge if you do not know. Of course, the people that are the Christian people, that teach people the Bible, because they do not know God, they can't teach it right. I'm just only happy about Dix. He will find in his Bible that he admits that God gets to know certain things. Okay, is that what's happening? So okay, I will go and see myself and see whether the report that I've been hearing is true or not. I won't tell you so many things, because once they are spoken, it may not give God rest again, trying to attack. What about this? What about that? Whereas God is righteous fully. Even if he does something that needs correction, he didn't do it as a result of an evil motive. It's according to the knowledge that he possessed at that time. And by the way, that's why you need to pray, making all your needs and requests clearly stated to God. God, you may not know that I need a car. I'm just using that. I don't want to be materialistic, because a lot of people will just go in that area now. They won't go about, please, I noticed this, deficit in me. Make me more holy in this area, in this area of my life. I've been a thief. And when I thief, they do not catch me, but they curse. I do not want to be acquiring people's curses. Please, help me overcome this spirit of thievery. God, I'm an adulterer. Please help me overcome the spirit of adultery. It's a wicked sin. That's it. And now let me go back to that of the car. God, you may not know that I need a car. You may think it is luxury, but it's not luxury. Look at my traveling from this rural area to that place. And you know the time of the bus. So it completely disorients me. And there are other reasons too why you just have to provide the car. And if you know the power of God, you know that God will do it if you have any. If he doesn't do it, it will make somebody to come to your area that will be traveling your route, and it will link the two of you together. You see, all our needs are just little things before God. Now, I've written something here also, the hidden power in warfare. That's very important. That's what I've been talking on now, the hidden power in warfare, the power of righteousness. There's much to say here, but on account of lack of time, it suffices to say that God and his forces are very active in the world and are ultimately responsible for success or failure in battles. Yes, God is very active. It's not a dead God. It's a fully active God and fully powerful. Do you know the way he was growing plants on the earth before? There was no rain on the earth before, but he had an irrigation system to water the whole face of the earth. The earth is just, like a little thing before him. And that's an area where I laugh. Because the Americans think that the aliens that they have captured and that are afraid of them. Because when I was in the US in the 70s, a friend confided in me that they have aliens captured and that they are afraid of them. So maybe they think that Michael and Archangel Michael and Archangel Gabriel are afraid of them. When one angel alone slaughtered how many of the is it Syrians or Assyrians? is it 85,000 or 185,000? You know, it's there in the scriptures. He slaughtered them, just one angel. And God said, are you going to make war against me? I am a spirit being. And you're also spirit. I mean, it's ridiculous when you start equating God with the aliens. God will use the aliens as his forces. But it's far much more than the ordinary aliens. That word is important. Ordinary than the ordinary aliens. In this warfare, God is for his side and vehemently in opposition to another side. And that's the point that I'm making. If you discover that you are in the side that is vehemently, that God is vehemently in opposition to, you need to do much work. And that's why Hungary's Viktor Orban, you know, I admire him so much. And he's going to make his country to be a legendary country. Because I see God has been obligated to fully defend his country. Not against Russia, because with the knowledge given, I don't think Russia will attack, unless Hungary allows itself to be attacked. That be a center of nuclear weapons against Russia. Everybody has seen, you know, how he has been trying to keep aloof, not to get involved. And that's what God expects the normal human being to do. You don't let an evil person or evil nation dictate to you. For this, kudos to the African nations that rejected, you know, the threat of that American ex-president that tried to force homosexuality on them. As a matter of fact, he hates the other camp, the camp that is vehemently opposed to, on account of their very repulsive character before him, as already enumerated at the beginning above.